If you believe that service never really ends, that even when the uniform comes off, the oath still echoes, then make sure to like and subscribe, because this story will remind you that some heroes don't disappear. They just go quiet until the world remembers their name. She wasn't anyone special. At least that's what Leah Smith always told herself. Just 28, working at the docks, helping her small Virginia town prepare for their annual Veterans Harbor tribute. The kind of woman who blended into the crowd. Jeans rolled at the cuffs, hair tied back with a ribbon, and paint smudges on her palms from fixing banners no one else had time for. But that morning, something felt different, like the world itself was holding its breath. She stood on a ladder beneath the whitewashed beams of the old community hall, adjusting the last corner of a bright red banner that read, "Thank you, veterans, for keeping our harbor safe." The breeze off the Chesapeake Bay carried the smell of salt and engine grease, and the faint hum of boats returning to port. Her parents, both retired now, were standing a few feet behind her, watching proudly. Her dad wore his old Marine Corps cap, sun-faded and frayed around the edges. Her mom held a roll of tape and a small American flag, smiling softly the way mothers do when they think they understand everything, when, in truth, they don't know the half of it. Leah had always been the quiet one. She'd come home from the Navy 5 years ago with steady hands but tired eyes, told her parents she was done, that she wanted peace and distance from all of it. They believed her. Everyone did. The town loved the idea of a polite, hard-working young woman who helped decorate veterans' halls and coordinated parades, who said, "Thank you for your service," and meant it. What they didn't know was that the woman standing on that ladder had once worn a uniform that didn't officially exist. That she had walked through rooms where every clock was classified and every word recorded in code. That for 3 years, she had signed her name not as Leah Smith, but as Commander L. M. Smith, Operator Valkyrie, Cyber Operations, United States Navy. The sun climbed higher, glinting off the water, making the harbor shimmer like a mirror. Leah took a step back on the ladder, satisfied with her work, and called down to her father. "What do you think?" she said. He grinned up at her. "Looks perfect, kiddo. Your granddad would have been proud." She smiled at that, heart swelling a little with warmth. Her grandfather had served too. The Smiths were a military family in quiet ways, people who served without ever needing to be seen. And that's all she wanted. A life simple enough that no one would ever look twice. Then came the sound. Low, distant at first, a faint rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat caught in the wind. She frowned, glancing toward the horizon. Her father squinted. "You hear that?" he asked. The sound grew louder, deeper. It wasn't a boat. It wasn't thunder. Within seconds, the steady thump of rotor blades broke across the sky, shaking the gulls from their posts on the docks. Conversation stopped. The breeze shifted. Heads turned. And then, over the ridge of the bay, a gray helicopter appeared, slicing through the clouds like a blade. Someone in the crowd gasped. The mayor, standing near the community center steps, stepped forward with a nervous laugh. "That's not part of today's program, is it?" Leah's father muttered. "That's military issue," his voice low, uncertain. The chopper circled once over the marina, its rotors whipping the flags and sending ribbons scattering through the air like confetti caught in a storm. Leah shielded her face from the spray of grit as it began to descend, wind tearing at her banner until half of it flapped loose. The noise was deafening. Children covered their ears. Camera phones rose. The helicopter landed hard in the open space near the pier. Its engines roared, echoing off the brick walls of the hull. When the side door slid open, 2 figures stepped out, flight suits, helmets, mirrored visors. The first raised a gloved hand, scanning the crowd. The second followed, holding a tablet that glowed faintly blue in the daylight. Leah's stomach tightened. There was something about their formation, their precision. It wasn't ceremonial. It was operational. Her pulse quickened. Her mother shouted something over the noise, but Leah didn't hear. The officer nearest the chopper tapped his headset, glanced at the tablet, then looked straight at her. A beat passed. Then he pointed. "Commander Smith, flight deck, now." The crowd froze. Every eye turned to Leah. Her father blinked, his hand dropping from his hat. "Commander," he whispered, his voice trailing off into disbelief. Her mother's mouth fell open. Leah didn't move. She just stared at the officer, the name, her old title, ringing in her ears like an echo from another life. The officer approached with purpose, his boots striking the asphalt in time with the pounding in Leah's chest. When he stopped a few feet from her, he saluted sharply. "Ma'am," he said, voice steady. "We were instructed to locate you immediately. You've been reactivated." Reactivated. The word hit her harder than the wind. She blinked. "There must be a mistake," she tried to say, but even as the words left her lips, she knew they weren't true. Something in her gut, the instinct she'd buried years ago, was already awake, calculating, scanning, listening. The officer handed her the tablet. On the screen, her name appeared above a classified authorization code. She saw the insignia of her old unit, the one she'd thought had been disbanded. The message was brief: Priority 1. Cyber Command request. Immediate extraction. Leah's father stepped forward, confusion etched deep across his face. "Leah, what's happening?" She swallowed hard, eyes flicking from the tablet to him, then to the chopper, its rotors spinning lazily now, waiting. "I don't know," she said softly. But she did. She'd always known this day might come. She just didn't expect it to come here, in front of her family, her neighbors, the people she'd worked so hard to convince she was ordinary. Her mother reached out, voice trembling. "Honey, what do they mean, Commander?" Leah looked at her, the old instinct pulling at her spine to stand straight, to mask emotion, to obey orders. "It's complicated," she managed. The officer lifted his visor slightly, revealing a weathered face, maybe 40, serious and respectful. "Ma'am, we need to go. The situation's developing fast. We'll brief you in flight." The weight of the moment pressed down on her. The banner above her fluttered helplessly in the downwash, half-finished, letters whipping in the air like a heartbeat. She took a breath and handed the tablet back. "Give me 1 minute." Turning to her parents, she stepped close, her voice steady but her eyes soft. "I told you I left that world behind," she said quietly. "But sometimes, the world doesn't leave you." Her father's throat tightened. "Leah, are you?" She smiled faintly, the old calm settling over her like muscle memory. "Yeah," she said. "I'm ready." The officer saluted again as she approached the chopper. Dust and debris swirled around her feet, ribbons and leaves spinning like ghosts of old parades. She ducked under the rotor, climbed aboard, and didn't look back, except once. Her mother's hand was pressed to her heart. Her father's hat was in his hand. The townspeople stood silent, phones lowered now, the awe overtaking curiosity. As the helicopter lifted off, the banner she'd left behind finally caught the wind and unfurled fully across the frame. The words gleamed in the sunlight as the chopper climbed into the sky. "Thank you, veterans." And below, her parents stood staring upward, watching their daughter disappear into the clouds, realizing for the first time that she hadn't just been thanking veterans all these years. She was one, and she'd just been called back to serve. The helicopter's roar faded into the distance, leaving only the stunned murmurs of the crowd and the restless snap of the banner against its ropes. Leah's parents stood frozen on the dock long after the dust had settled, her mother clutching the little flag like a lifeline, her father staring at the sky where the gray bird had vanished. Up there, Leah sat in the back of the chopper, headset pressed to her ears, the steady hum of the engines drowning out her thoughts. Across from her, the pilot passed a tablet back again, this time with a live briefing flashing across the screen. Coastal defense servers had been compromised, a cyber attack on naval encryption channels. And the signature pattern? It matched one only a handful of people in the world could recognize. One of them was her. She hadn't touched a console in years, but as the data streamed across the screen, muscle memory kicked in, her mind falling into patterns, reading signals, tracing origins. It was like slipping into an old language she thought she'd forgotten. She glanced at the pilot. "This came from inside the Atlantic command grid," she said quietly. He nodded. "We think so. You built that system. We need your eyes." She leaned back, exhaling slowly. She hadn't expected to ever hear those words again. By the time the helicopter touched down at the naval airfield, the sun had dropped behind the trees, throwing long gold lines across the tarmac. Leah climbed out, boots hitting the ground with a steadiness that surprised her. Officers snapped salutes as she passed, their faces a mix of curiosity and disbelief. The name Commander Smith rippled through the hangar like a rumor coming true. Inside the operations tent, she scanned the glowing screens, code scrolling in waves, red warnings pulsing at the edges. And in the middle of it all, her old call sign reappeared on a terminal window. Valkyrie, active. No one needed to tell her what to do. She pulled her hair back, slipped on a headset, and began typing. Commands flew from her fingertips, tracing firewalls, rerouting pathways, countering attacks in real time. Around her, the younger analysts watched in silence, realizing they were witnessing something they'd only read about in training briefs. The woman who had once led the Navy's invisible war was back. Hours blurred into motion. Finally, the screen steadied, alerts dimming to green. The breach was sealed. The grid was safe. The room exhaled as one. Leah removed the headset, eyes heavy but clear. "It's done," she said. The commanding officer stepped forward, jaw set with respect. "Welcome back, Commander. You just stopped a blackout." She gave a tired smile. "Let's hope it holds." Outside, dawn was breaking. The first rays of sunlight glinted off the wing of the parked helicopter. Leah stood at the edge of the flight deck, watching the horizon. For the first time in years, she felt the familiar pull of purpose. Not pride, not glory, just that quiet understanding that some people never really stop serving. They just wait until they're needed again. The world moved quietly in the days that followed, unaware of how close it had come to chaos. The breach Leah stopped was classified, sealed under layers of digital silence. But inside certain Pentagon corridors, whispers spread. "Commander Smith's back," they said, half in disbelief, half in reverence. She didn't ask for recognition, didn't expect it. She had done her duty and left the same way she'd arrived, silently, through the early morning fog that rolled off the base. The helicopter that brought her there returned her to the same harbor it had taken her from, settling on the grass behind the community hall just as the sun burned through the dawn. Her parents were waiting. They didn't rush forward. They just stood there, hands linked, eyes full of questions that didn't need to be asked. When Leah stepped off the flight deck, she was no longer in uniform. Just her jeans, her boots, her wind-tossed hair. To everyone else, she looked exactly as she had before, except for one thing. The way she carried herself. The quiet certainty that followed her like a shadow of light. Her mother was the first to move, voice breaking as she whispered, "You came back." Leah smiled softly. "I told you I would." Her father's eyes glistened as he studied her face. "They needed you, didn't they?" Leah nodded. For a minute. She paused, the wind tugging at her hair. Sometimes 1 minute makes all the difference. Behind them, the townspeople began to gather again, word spreading that the helicopter had returned. Some of the same people who'd watched her leave stood now at the pier's edge, hesitant but awed. The mayor stepped forward, hat in hand, and said the only thing he could think of, "We didn't know, Leah." "You weren't supposed to," she replied simply. "That's the job." Later that morning, as the community event resumed, Leah climbed the same ladder she'd left hanging days before. The half-loose banner still flapped in the breeze, one corner trailing over the edge. She tied it down tight this time, smoothing out the wrinkles. The words "Thank you" veterans caught the full light of day, gleaming bright against the sky. Children ran past with paper flags. Old veterans sat in folding chairs by the water, trading quiet smiles. Her father stood nearby, his arms crossed, watching her. "You know," he said, "when you were little, you used to stare at the jets from the carrier and say, 'One day I'm gonna fly higher than them.' Guess you did." Leah chuckled softly, shaking her head. "I didn't fly, Dad. I just listened." He nodded slowly. "That's what the good ones do." As the crowd settled, someone tapped Leah's shoulder. It was a young sailor, barely 20, stationed nearby. He looked nervous, holding out a small folded note. "Ma'am," he said respectfully, "this came for you through command courier. I was told to deliver it by hand." Leah opened it. No signature, just a short line written in clean, block letters. "For actions above and beyond, our systems hold because of your silence. RL, Navy Cyber Command." She folded the note carefully, slipping it into her pocket. No medals, no applause. Just acknowledgement between those who understood what service really meant. As evening fell, Leah stayed behind while the others packed up. The lights along the dock flickered to life, painting the water in ribbons of gold and silver. Her parents stood a few feet away, side by side, watching her work. "You sure you're staying home for good this time?" her mother asked gently. Leah didn't answer right away. She looked out toward the horizon, where the ocean met the sky, infinite and quiet. I'm home, she said finally. But I'll always be listening. The wind shifted, and for a fleeting second, the faint rhythmic hum of rotor blades echoed over the bay. She glanced upward. Far in the distance, barely a speck against the clouds, a single Navy chopper glided low, dipping its nose before turning east. A salute. A farewell. A reminder. Leah smiled, a quiet exhale of peace passing through her. She reached up, adjusting the edge of the banner one last time. Her hands were steady, her gaze calm. Around her, the world had gone still, not in mourning, but in respect. The kind of stillness reserved for those who never asked to be heroes, but became one anyway. When she finally stepped back, the banner rippled in the harbor breeze, bold and bright, the words glowing beneath the soft amber light of sunset. Thank you, veterans. And standing there, with her family beside her and the sound of the sea folding gently against the shore, Leah understood something her years in uniform had never taught her. You don't stop being a protector when the mission ends. You just learn to guard different things. Home, memory, peace,